Welcome to the Tuesday, February 7th, 2023 Tyngsborough School Committee meeting. Please be reminded these meetings are audio and video recorded. My name is Becky Stanton and I call this meeting to order. We'll start with introductions with Nate.
Hi, Nate Marino, Student Representative.
Jeff Bowe.
Justine Puma.
Good evening, Mike Woodlock, Assistant Superintendent.
Hi, Mike Flanagan, Superintendent.
Anthony Tenerella.
Ryan McMahon.
Rob Mullen.
Good evening, Joe Messina, Business Administrator.
Please rise for a Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll seek a motion to approve the January 24th, 2023 School Committee meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That carries 600. Citizen time? Seeing none. We'll move on to correspondence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did receive an email from Bert Bushman today, who's a member of the School Building Committee, that Mr. Bushman, as well as Chair Stanton and Vice Chair Tenerella, attended a meeting with Senator Kennedy last night to talk about a potential bill that Senator Kennedy is sponsoring for MSBA reimbursement. So I don't know if either one of you want to give a little update or highlight to that meeting?
Sure. So as Dr. Flanagan said, the three of us met with Senator Kennedy last night to present the project to him, to explain the value engineering process that we're going through and to advocate for our town. We are currently facing, we're projecting that there's a potential overrun due to building material costs, and it's not unique to Tyngsborough. We talked about this at our last meeting when we had JCJ Fontaine and left field here. So we are exploring alternative funding sources if we can get them. Senator Kennedy's bill is, in short, it's proposing $150 million to support existing projects across the state, existing MSBA projects across the state. And so it could take about a year to 2 years for that to come to fruition, if it does. But you know, we'll continue to advocate for the town of Tyngsborough. You know, Mr. Bushman did a great job presenting, and he did the majority of the talking. But Tony and I had some points to chime into as well. And so Senator Kennedy did request that as the bill gets brought forward and brought to committee, and they're requesting testimony, that members of our community, be it our school community, our parent community, or just the town of Tyngsborough, send in letters, send in either written testimony or appear in person for in-person testimony to try to support the bill and to support our town. Tony, did I miss anything?
No.
Okay. Great. Moving on to personnel. There's none at this time.
Correct.
Share the success, Nate.
Yep, so TES would like to give a special striped shout out to their school counselors as we celebrate National School Counselor Week. So over at TES, they have Mrs. Reichard, Mrs. Manganis, and Ms. Tyros. They'd like to thank them for everything they do for TES students, staff, and families. They're also happy to announce that the 2023 through 2024 preschool and kindergarten registration will open up soon. Tyngsborough Elementary School offers students ages 3 through 5 an integrated and inclusive preschool experience where children with and without disabilities learn and play together. The registration window for new families is Monday, February 27th through Friday, March 3rd. And the TES kindergarten program strives to foster a love of learning that brings a sense of joy through child-centered play-based experiences that focus on the whole child. Kindergarten registration is on March 1st. You can feel free to visit the TES website for more information. Over at the middle school, their Spirit Week and the cardboard sled derby that they've been working on for a while is on the way soon. They're hoping for some snow for the event, but who knows with this winter where we'll be. But either way, it's going to happen, so that's good to hear. And then also TMS Robotics Club is competing this weekend. The basketball teams continue to have a successful season, and Art Club, Knowledge Bowl, Dungeons and Dragons Club, and the student council are also continuing to meet over there. At THS, art students have begun installing a wall mural in the Library and Media Center. Students submitted and voted on a design that the class will complete together. It's right on the opposite side of this wall, and it's looking pretty good so far, so that's good to see. Congratulations to THS Theater on an outstanding performance of Newsies. Great job to the cast from both the high school and the middle school on that, as well as the crew and everyone else who helped out with that performance. Great job to them. Congratulations to the senior winter athletes as they continue to be recognized as the regular season is winding down and teams prepare for the postseason. And lastly, the college fair will be taking place on Thursday, February 16th from 6 to 8 in the Kelleher Gymnasium. And then once again, just happy National School Counselor Week to all the great counselors of Tyngsborough Public Schools and everything that they do for us. Students definitely greatly appreciate it. So that's all that I have.
Thanks, Nate. Subcommittee update, capital asset.
Yes, I will take that. Capital Asset met last Wednesday. We're still going through all the department requests. We got our funding numbers that we're going to try to stick with, which also includes ARPA funding. And we continue to evaluate each one of them. We're meeting for the next 3 Wednesdays, actually, the 15th, 22nd, and the 1st or something like that. And hopefully by the 1st, we'll have a list that we all agree to. So still in progress and more to come.
Thanks for your work on that.
But of course.
For a budget subcommittee update, we met last week to discuss the revenue side of the budget. Mr. Messina will cover some of that later in the meeting. Moving on to unfinished business, the superintendent report, the MSBA update, and teaching and learning. Dr. Flanagan?
Thank you. We'll jump into this. Just as a reminder about our upcoming school committee meetings, February 28th, we will present our initial budget. We have invited the FinCom, and they have confirmed they'll be here to see the initial budget presentation for FY24. March 14th, we will hopefully, if not March 14th, March 28th, we will have a better understanding of what we need to do to attain a balanced budget that's approved, that will receive approval from the town. So that'll be coming down the pike either on the 14th or the 28th. My guess is on the 14th, we'll present you with some options on how we can achieve that budget. And on the 28th, we'll come back and finalize what that budget number looks like, assuming we progress accordingly. And the next thing that's on the agenda, just to keep you on your radar, as always, March 15th, we have a school building committee meeting coming up. With that, we'll go into our True North statement.
Could I just,
yes.
do we have a tri-board meeting coming up soon? I thought I heard mention of a tri-board.
So we do have, Mr. Messina and I are meeting with the town manager on Thursday at 1 o'clock to kind of confirm when tri-board will be, when budget presentation will be. We had a preliminary calendar that we put out at the beginning, probably a month and a half, 2 months ago. I don't know if there's been any deviation from that, but we'll get confirmation on that on Thursday, and we'll certainly have that for you soon.
Great, thanks.
So as we like to do each and every meeting, remind ourselves and everyone else that, you know, our True North statement is what guides us, what guides our decision making, that we value all people in our school and the community, and we're committed to continuous growth. And just a quick aside on that, Sarah Lewensick and I gathered a group of the willing together, 10 volunteers to examine our DCAP, our district accommodation plan, which, if you're not familiar with it out there, is essentially like a list of accommodations that should be available to all students regardless of whether or not they have something written such as a 504 or an IEP. So it's available to all students, and it's to help to guide our teachers in having some strategies for when students struggle. So looking at our DCAP, it's been in place for quite a while. So we took a shot at looking at some of the things that might need revision. We had a group of administrators and teachers take a look at it and offer us suggestions, and we'll update you on that process going forward. But we really wanted it to reflect changes in best practice in education, as well as changes in our SDI. So just a heads up on that going forward.
So I'll provide you with an MSBA update. Some of this information isn't all that new. You've seen that the trees are down in the back parking lot. You've seen that the construction fence is up with the screen in front of it. I'm going to come back to bullet 3 in a second. The project team will present to Drake Water Supply, which I believe is the last permit required in this phase of the project, and I believe that's on February 15th. So it looks like all the permitting will be completed at that point. JCJ is working hard on construction documents. I'll get that to the MSBA, and our next meetings are March 15th. Bullet number 3 is something I want to draw people's attention to. There was preliminary discussion that Fontaine would mobilize onto campus beginning next Monday and stay within their fence line as they begin to cut the communication system between the high school and the middle school and cap it off for the demolition project. A few hours ago, I received an email from Fontaine asking if we could look at, and Mr. Ogden doesn't know this yet, if we could look at what arrival and dismissal on this campus will look like for the week prior to February vacation. It looks like the project is going to take a decent amount of time, and they're concerned about just having the 1 week to decouple the buildings. So we will be meeting tomorrow, myself, Mr. Ogden, and Mr. Pollitt, with a preliminary drop-off and pickup plan for this campus that has as minimal impact as possible. That being said, once we finalize a plan so that FBI can mobilize next Monday, we will communicate that plan via every social media platform as well as email to all parents. So we want to keep things as consistent as possible, but in the same breath, we know that it's going to be a construction site for the next several years, and we're going to have to, be as flexible as possible. So, so stay tuned for more information on what pickup and drop off on Norris Road will look like next week. And that is the MSP at this time. Happy to answer any questions. Anyone have any questions about that? Okay.
All right, moving on to 8B, the fiscal '24 budget revenue projections. Mr. Messina?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Madam Chair, we're still going with teaching and learning right
Oh,
now.
sorry.
Yep, that's
I
okay.
was jumping ahead.
That's all right. So in keeping with updating on our initiatives as outlined this year, our first initiative, our first big rock as we call them, is meeting the needs of all students. We said and we promised you that we'd have an update on the progress of developing a wind block at the high school moving forward. And so Mr. Ogden and Ms. Trainer are here to give us an update.
Thanks for having us tonight. So if, Mr. Wallach, you can move to the next slide. Back in September, we presented all this information to kind of outline what we had already done, as well as our plan moving forward for the remainder of the year, with the goal of piloting wind for trimester 3. So Ms. Trainer's kind of spearheaded this whole movement, and we've done a lot of work with it, and actually this past week she'll get into it a little more. We did some of the scheduling training on that as well. So a lot of that stuff has been checked off, and we're making some great progress with that. So, Kate?
Do you guys just want to slide? So this is our proposed schedule when we add the wind block into the high school schedule. Currently, right now, we have 5 periods a day, including a homeroom period. Each period right now is running at 68 minutes. The goal is when we put the wind block in, we would eliminate homeroom, which takes away, I think it's 6 or 7 minutes, plus the 3-minute passing time in between, which would allow us to have a 40-minute wind period, and classes would be 62 minutes. So we'd be only missing 6 minutes in each period to be able to add that 40 minutes wind period. And then what we have been doing and what's to come, just yesterday at our staff meeting, we trained the whole staff on the scheduling software, the adaptive scheduler that we're using. The past month or so, we've been working on programming that into PowerSchool and making a template of what that would look like, which would obviously change week to week, pending on what we're going to be offering. But there was some work that needed to be done ahead of time. We trained the whole staff yesterday on that, and it seemed to go pretty well. And then our goal is early March to have class meetings with each grade level to explain to them what this is going to look like and what the expectations are. And then we'll look to pilot it. And that could start with really just one time with the students meeting with their WIN advisors and just say, okay, if we were to do this for the week, let's just practice scheduling. We're not going to go through it, but let's sit down and practice scheduling to make sure everybody's confident with the scheduling piece. And then once everybody's feeling comfortable, we can look to possibly run WIN on a 2-day-a-week period. And then if it's working well and everybody understands their expectation, the goal is to have WIN running in full force, hopefully at some point during trimester 3. So next year we can start strong with it built into the schedule.
Are there any
Questions on that?
I'd just say, I think this is great that you guys are managing to get this in. I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of high schools over the last 3 or 4 years, and there's so many schools that want to put this in. I actually got a call from a colleague out in Washington last week, just struggling to try and make this work. Wanting it so badly because our kids do need certain things that aren't available in a typical Bell schedule. And the fact that you guys are kind of moving slow to put this in and make sure it's done well is great. So I just want to give these to, especially Kate, because I know she's done a ton of work on it, but great job, planning this effectively and and making it happen. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you to you both. I've heard lots of feedback from how well it is works at the middle school. And I'm excited to hear that we're going to be able to offer this to our students at the high school, especially, as we're moving into next year, the new group of students coming into the high school for 9th grade, it should be in place for them. That's fantastic. Thank you for the time you've put into this.
Real quick, could you remind anybody watching what WIN is and how it's different from like a study hall?
Absolutely. So WIN stands for What I Need, and we decided to keep that name because it's consistent with the elementary school and the middle school. And it's to provide a time for the students to get support services put in place as well as enrichment services. So it's to be able to provide that more of that Tier 1 and Tier 3 support, as well as fun enrichment activities that students might be interested in doing that they might not be able to do after school. Same with some students. Not all students can stay after school for extra help, and they'll be able to get that during the school day.
So if I can just piggyback on that, one of the things that the state has asked all school districts to do is implement a multi-tiered systems of support. So when Kate refers to Tier 1, that's your basic classroom instruction. And traditionally, not all students have had access to that because they've needed other things. And to make sure that they get that, we need to have that in place. So, I think we used this example before, but sometimes when students needed additional things, whether it be as a result of having an IEP and additional services, or just simply needed, support services in some way or shape, they'd have to miss a Tier 1 classroom activity, whether it be music or physical education, or sometimes they get pulled out of English to get additional, reading help, and then they're missing out on something else. So this is a really great way to make sure that that doesn't happen, that all students have access to Tier 1. And then Tier 2 is if they need extra help somewhere else, they can get that during WIN without missing out. Additionally, some students that have, that do have an IEP, we're getting, support every single day for a whole period. And some students honestly don't need that much. If they do, then that's perfect. But if they don't, WIN provides an opportunity for them to get that support during WIN some days while getting enrichment or additional support other days without having to give up a whole block. And so that's one more course that they can take, one more course that gets them closer to an honors level course or an AP course or just a course that they want to take. So it provides a lot more equity in the schedule for all students. So it's a really effective way to get that done.
Thank you.
Are you also going to have time for clubs and stuff to meet sometimes too during the WIN block? Because it seems like a good time to have some of the kids to come together that might not be able to come after school because of a sport commitment.
Yep, so it just depends on the teacher that's interested in running that. If they're interested in doing that, like I could see, chess being offered or something like that. We just need to be careful with stipended positions. So if it was a club that it is a stipend position for that advisor, that would need to be after school. But there would be a lot during the day. I could see a lot of some of those after school clubs transitioning over to the WIN block.
Any other questions? No. Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. Thanks for all the work that you've put into it. I did want to seek a motion to take 9A out of order.
So moved?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 6-0-0. For 9A, this is the DECA trip. It's typically a trip that the school does every year. We've heard from DECA quite a bit over the last couple of years, and so we didn't feel the need to bring them in their busy schedules again tonight. But while we have Ms. Trainer and Mr. Ogden here, I didn't know if there were any questions about DECA or the DECA trip before we take a vote.
Yeah, there's a one-page overview in your drive for to access all the detailed information. I would say it's standard fare. It's what we've done every year, Jeff. If you want to give a couple highlights about the trip.
Yep, it's going to run from March 9th through 11th. Zach Richall is the advisor. He'll be taking 6 students with him this year. They're competing in both individual as well as some team competitions.
And they're going right to Boston.
Yep, it's at the Marriott right in Copley in Boston.
And this is the group that made it further last year, and they went to Atlanta, didn't they?
Yes.
They did.
Yeah,
Yep.
They
great,
did.
yeah.
They've done a great job.
Well, I'll seek a motion to approve the DECA trip.
So moved?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That carries 600. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
8B would be the fiscal '24 revenue projections. Now we'll come to you, Mr. Messina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Woodlock, I did put a revised B1 in there for you.
Okay.
That's actually, there's actually a new one in there, Mike.
Oh, well, now you've got me all screwed up.
Sorry. Last minute cleanup. Thank you. So this is actually the cover page for your entire budget that I just wanted to highlight. Just a few small changes on the expenses before we look at the other revenues. The three large items, salaries, out-of-district tuitions, and transportation remain the same. For utilities, there was a slight adjustment downward to take into account the new natural gas price for our next heating season. It's actually going down. So that did get reduced by approximately $9,000 or so. In the review of the revenues, both the cover page expenses reduced slightly, as well as the pensions that get charged to the grants actually increased. So those two numbers are new. And we'll review the other revenue that's gone up approximately $100,000 on the next slide. But Dr. Flanagan and myself, in talking about the Valley Collaborative and what their plans are going forward, we did feel comfortable at this point, including a $50,000 Valley credit for next year. 2 weeks ago when I presented it, it was actually at 0, but at this moment in time, we are comfortable with the $50,000 credit. So having said all that, we can shift over to the revenue sheet, if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Woodlock, and look at how we came to that 3 million and change number. I won't touch upon these in too much detail for you tonight. I can tell you the grants as a whole are going up, and that's primarily the last of the COVID money, the ESSER 3 grant that's expiring in September of '24. We'll actually utilize the last $300,000 of that grant for next year. Tuitions, analyzing the tuition revenue, there's a slight decrease in that. Athletics, pretty much remaining the same. And the other source revenues with an explanation next to all of them of what they're looking like in terms of projections. Rather than hitting all of these one by one, I don't know if the committee's will is to address any questions that might come up at this time or spend time looking at each one of them.
Are there any specific questions? I've gone through this in detail with Mr. Messina, so.
And I tried to put a little explanation on the side of each of those as to what the driver is to come up with the projected revenue at this time.
Are there any questions or any specific line items you'd like Mr. Messina to dive into?
I would also add, Madam Chair, that we are going to refine this a little bit, tighten up a little bit, and when we present it to the FinCom, we will go much slower and we'll kind of walk them right through the process. So I know there are several new FinCom members.
Yes, absolutely.
Go ahead, Rob.
Mr. Messina, have we in the recent past been using the middle school gymnasium for revenue? And how will the loss of that affect it if we have?
So our primary gym rental for the middle school these past number of years has been the rec department, and we're currently utilizing both the high school gym and the elementary school gym for their programs. Okay. So I don't see any reduction in revenue with the loss of that building.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think there's any other lines that we need to go into detail, Mr. Messina.
Okay. So that, Mr. Woodlock, if you could jump back to that other overview sheet. That brings our current budget down with all of the additional requests at this moment to $23,710,140, which is a 6.6% increase off of this year's budget. And as Dr. Flanagan mentioned, we are meeting with Mr. Hanson on Thursday to present these numbers, and you know, I think Dr. Flanagan would acknowledge we want to work very hard at tightening these numbers up over the coming days and weeks prior to the 28th.
Yeah, just one comment, and, you know, I've said it to you, Mr. Messina, but, you know, I don't feel that we can go to the town asking for 6.6%. I understand that our students need certain things. I just don't, I'm not comfortable going to the town with 6.6%, so I'll be interested to see what the discussion with Mr. Hanson is, and how you can sharpen your pencils a little.
Yeah, again, our process is we kind of lean on our administrators to say, this is what we like to see, this is what we want to see, and then we kind of put it in there. But we know certainly 6.6 is not a good number. You know, I think one of the things that we're concerned about is, you know, the 2.7% that we've talked about over X number of years is well and good without any dealing with student needs and dealing with a 14% increase on residential programming or 5% increase on out-of-district placement for students. So those things that just can't be calculated in a rigid budget. So that being said, we have always been fiscally responsible, and we, again, will be fiscally responsible, and we'll work towards a number, and we'll get there.
I did have a additional question, and I think we had spoken about it a few weeks ago, Mr. Messina, and I don't know if anything's changed since then, but during the November election, there was a bill that passed for the state for extra funding, the millionaire's tax, I think they were calling it, to go to education and roads. Have we heard how that will come to fruition for education, and if education is our, you know, our town budget, or is it some other definition of education?
And I don't know about Dr. Flanagan. I've heard nothing at my end about that additional income tax.
Yeah.
I know it is, you know, for roads and for education, but again, as I mentioned in the budget subcommittee, education is not just pre-K to 12. Education is higher education, and I don't think the Commonwealth's wrapped their head around the number and how to distribute it yet at this point.
No, it's all speculation at this point. They're talking about fully funding Student Opportunity Act, which has minimal impact on Tyngsborough. They're talking about fully funding Circuit Breaker, which wouldn't hit our budget till the following year anyway. So there's a lot of discussion about a lot of different ways to fund it, but there's no plan yet.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll look forward to hearing from the state on that, I guess.
And I can tell you, just for the committee's knowledge, is that the 6.6 increase that we have at this time, and again, I agree with the chair that we certainly wouldn't be going to the town at 6.6%, but an acknowledgement that all of the other school districts that have been in touch, that I've been in touch with, are all coming in at, you know, 7 to 8.5% in terms of what a rollover budget may look like this year, just because, as Dr. Flanagan mentioned, the OS&D tuition rates, you know, everything is rising. We see it at the building committee level. We see it as consumers in the grocery stores. I mean, there seems to be an increased cost to do everything. So this is just the first pass where we are today, and I don't think at all that we will be looking at that figure when we present on the 28th.
No.
In the 14% for that uplift on out-of-district tuition, is that hard and fast, or is that still a recommendation? Like, where are we with that? When we first heard about it, it's happening.
That's happening.
Okay, it is happening.
That's happening. All right. And as a result of that, kind of the chain reaction is the public out-of-district programmings all went up by at least 5%.
Okay.
As well. And basically, there's a need to staff these schools, and finding employees is impossible at this point. So they need to be as competitive as possible with public school districts. So, so there was a chain reaction which hit our budget again.
Yep. All right.
But-
Are there any other questions about the budget?
Do we have any money in the stabilization fund?
On the town side, is about 130,000, Mr. Messina.
And that actually, Mr. Tenorella, that's actually one of your revenue sources on the budget, you know, is utilizing the 134,000 in the stabilization. And again, like all of the expenses are subject to review, we'll continue to sort of look at that revenue and, you know, ideally, we wouldn't use all of that stabilization, but in a budget year where the tuitions are running so incredibly high compared to this year, it might make sense to utilize what we have there. And again, you need to balance your budget at some point, and if 134,000 stays in stabilization, it means something else has to shift. So we will be tweaking these numbers prior to the 28th.
And that's what the money's put in there for?
Correct.
Right.
To support these programs?
Correct.
Yes.
I'd much rather use it than lose something just so we have it.
Yep.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Messina, I think we are still with you for finance, signing of bills.
Nope, great. Shift all my papers and tell the committee that 11 bill warrants were presented tonight. I do have them all back approved. The list of the warrant numbers, accounts, and amounts are in your drive. In addition to that, also in that report is a corrected figure for your bill warrant from 2 weeks ago for the school committee budget. It's actually $11 higher due to a last-minute realization that we took too many credits for bills that were presented on one vendor, so we had to back off an $11 credit to present at another time. So that number changed slightly. For signing of bills, there were 2 payrolls since we last looked at signing a payroll. The payroll of January 16th and payroll of January 30th. And again, those 2 warrant numbers and amounts are in your drive. And that's it tonight.
Great. School committee discussion. Nate?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Jeff?
All set, thank you.
Christine?
I just want to commend the theater production for their show, The Newsies, this weekend. I had the opportunity to go and see 2 of the shows, and they were amazing. They did a great job. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Whitlock?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Messina?
I'm all set, thank you.
Rob?
All set, thanks.
All right.
I imagine Newsies was great. I had to pick my daughter up from basketball, and this place was so full of cars, it felt like graduation. They were parked out back, they were parked in the driveway, so I've seen nothing but great reviews on social media, so great job to the theater program. I want to thank Kate Trainer, Jeff Ogden for coming tonight. It's always good to hear from them. I want to thank Zach Richall, too. So, you know, we're talking about the job he's doing with DECA. We know they went to Atlanta last year. He also took over the girls' basketball program, and they're doing a phenomenal job this year. The girls seem to really be responding to him. So I think he's just a great asset for the school and the community.
Right.
Thank you.
Tony?
I'm all set, thank you.
Dr. Flanagan?
I was unable to attend Newsies this past weekend, and I was very bummed that I couldn't be there, but I heard it was absolutely incredible. So congratulations to the cast and crew. And I just want to say, you know, we joked about it a few months ago that our office is right there, but the amount of work and time that these kids put into that production for months. So a huge feather in their caps. So congratulations to the cast and crew.
I heard today was the 100th day of school. So congratulations to all of our teachers, staff, and especially to our students for 100 days of hard work. You know, keep working hard, get through the rest of the school year, finish strong, and, you know, for Nate, you don't have that much more.
Nope.
So with that, we do have a need for executive session to discuss reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health, rather than professional competence of an individual, or to discuss the discipline or dismissal of, or complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. We'll return from executive session only to adjourn the regular session meeting. I'm seeking a motion to enter into executive session,
So moved.
Second.
and this will require a roll call vote. Jeff?
In favor?
Christine?
In favor?
I'm in favor,
In favor?
In favor?
In favor.
and that passes 600. We are in executive session. Thank you.